Jefe, what is a plethora?
And my guest is Victor Davis Hanson, in my opinion, the foremost expert who understands all the issues involved with illegal immigration. And I've got to read this. What you said to this group is amazing, that this generation that's coming up cannot speak Spanish even. In my case, this is you speaking, when the second round of illegal immigration came in the 80s, it was very different than when I grew up with, what I grew up with. When I grew up, it was 100,000 people per year. The age-old forces of immigration, of integration, assimilation, and intermarriage made people Americans within a generation. Most of the immigrants were from diverse places in Mexico, Tijuana, Guadalajara, and so on. This second wave in 1980 was mostly from Chiapas. Did I say that right?
Chiapas and Oaxaca, yeah.
Mostly indigenous people and a lot of people who did not speak Spanish. So when my children were going to school, it was very strange. This is amazing. We'd go to the PTA or go to school, and all of the instructions for the parents were in Spanish and English, but a large number of the parents couldn't read the Spanish because their indigenous language was a dialect. And I thought this was so strange. We're spending all this money to translate documents to people who can't understand things. Or
yes, and that's also true. It was also true of people who only had an 8th grade education, because the type of Spanish that was written was from people who came out of the Fresno State Spanish Department, and they didn't use the same vocabulary as somebody with an 8th grade education who's an indigenous native of Oaxaca. So it would have been much better, in other words, to just immerse them immediately in English and cut out all of these second language aids that are on the phone or in print matter, save the state, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, but more importantly, integrate, assimilate the new population into the body politic. But we did, if you were going to dream up a reason, how do I want Hispanic immigrants to fail?
Right.
Well, then I would say to them, don't learn English, don't have a high school diploma, be illegal, congregate in a barrio, vote for people who are third generation, have nothing in common with you, but will represent your victimized, your grievances against your host, and you will be perpetual second-class citizens. And that's what's happened. And it's tragic. And then whenever you see immigrants that came legally from Mexico and they followed the old melting pot protocol, they're very successful.
Yep.
And they don't see themselves as Mexicans first. They see themselves as Americans, and then incidentally, whether they're Italian or Mexican, it's the same. The old 19th century traditions survive.
Yep. I say it all the time. Bilingual education did a disservice to the very students it was supposed to help. They wound up, and I'm a teacher too, they wound up fluent neither in English nor their native language. The whole thing is crazy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I taught for 21 years in the Department of Foreign Languages, where people who came in from Mexico could not read Spanish. It's just a fact. And they could not speak classical Spanish, and they didn't know anything about English, and they didn't speak English well either.
Amazing.
So as a teacher of Latin and Greek, I would always have, most of my students were Hispanic, and in 4 years I could have them speaking not only better English, but because they knew Latin, they would go back and relearn Spanish in a grammatical context, and they spoke better Spanish. But that was all an anathema, because again, if you don't have a collective grievance against the host, then there's no need for massive federal bureaucracies, federal employees, victimized politics.
Yeah, follow the money.